Welcome to live stream number 131. My name is Lars Christensen, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's live stream. Today's topic is 3D printing, 3D printing a part for education. I think this is going to be a really good one. I'm going to show a lot in today's live stream. So yeah, man, I really hope that that is. See, we already got a couple of people in here. I really hope this is useful. You let me know. Thumbs up if you like these. Thumbs down if you don't. Be honest, please. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, like I said, I think today it's going to be I'm super excited about this one. Keith reached out to me on Twitter and asked me, he's doing some parts for some education. They're going to 3D print some parts. And this is kind of like my take on those parts. I think that there is a lot of good stuff in this live stream here. We're going to cover a lot. If I'm going too fast, remember you can always rewind. So if I do a quick analysis here, I just wanted to show what we're after. So this is kind of like a two-part that is spinning around. And if I kind of like go normal to, you maybe can see that we're going to have some clearances in here for 3D printing. That could be clearances for other stuff too. But specifically here on this part that Keith sent me, there's kind of like two different parts that need to be 3D printed. One needs to be spinning around. We're basically going to do two parts. We're going to do this one here. Then we're going to modify it, the same part, and actually add a kind of like a handle that's going to spin around here. And you can see that I have kind of like I have context set, so it bangs against here. Again, if I do a section analysis on this one, you will kind of like see, and everything got clearances in here. So that's a lot of good stuff. We're gonna talk about clearances. We're gonna talk about as-built joints. We're gonna talk about components versus bodies, all kinds of good stuff. Enough me talking. I'm gonna just jump into this. So I'm gonna start a brand new file, new design from scratch, because as you know, that's what I like to do. Because we already got 40 people in here. Absolutely appreciate it. Okay, so I'm gonna start a new sketch. And by the way, let me just say quick, if things are blurry, try to click on the little gear icon in your window and set it to 720. YouTube have a tendency to lower the resolution because of this live stream, but hopefully we're good. So I'm gonna start a new sketch. Doesn't really matter on what plane here. And I'm just gonna draw up, and I'm gonna show you a couple of different ways to do this too. I'm gonna try to answer some emails, some different stuff. So follow along. So I'm starting out with a line tool, and I'm just gonna draw up the shape of the one half that kind of rotates. So bear with me for a second. Just drawing this thing up here. You can always go over to the origin, then you kind of like get the shadow line and close this one off here. So this is kind of like the one half that is going to rotate around. I'm going to throw a couple of dimensions on it, D for dimensions. And I'm going to make this one, this doesn't really matter. This is more for my sanity. I'm going to make this one 40. I'm going to make this one 35. Just bear with me. I'm going to make sure that this one, let's make this one 6. I'm going to leave this one 6 too. And 30. Okay, that is probably pretty good right here. So this is the one part that is spinning around. Now, let's talk a little bit about some clearances in here, because as you saw on, you guys just coming in right now, I'm sorry. Let me just stop the sketch. On the original part here, this part NP spins around, and that's done with a joint. And if you're looking, if I do a section view, you will see that there is a clearance in here, right? Because this is going to kind of like be printed out as a piece that where it's sitting in there and can spin around. So there needs to be some clearances to be able to do that. Now, I've talked about clearances before, specifically 2 live streams I did on that. And because this is 3D printed, it really depends on the accuracy of your printer. You will find the links for those 2 live streams down in the description area of the video. One of the things I talked about in the second video is actually making a gauge set that you can either 3D print this, you can use your CNC mill, whatever, but this is a way to test out fit and function, because there is no golden rule when it comes to clearances. It really depends on your machine. It depends on the part size, right? So like this part here, I'm drawing this one up here, that's 40 millimeters. I mean, if I scaled that up to human size, I would need a lot bigger clearances. So be aware of that. But let me show you a little tip about this. So what I'm gonna do in this sketch, I'm back in the first sketch. I'm gonna hit O for offset. Now, if I just click on an edge here, you will see that it does the whole chain around. Let me cancel out of that. Make sure you uncheck chain selection. And now I can actually do the sides, the edges that matters, okay? So select these edges. Now these edges go the wrong direction. I'm gonna go the opposite. So I'm just gonna type in minus, and I'm gonna, for this model, I'm gonna do a half a millimeter clearances between the 2 parts. So I'm gonna hit enter to that. So now I kind of like have that clearance drawn in with the offset command. And then I'm going to draw the other half. So I'm actually drawing the 2 components in one sketch. This kind of goes back to the whole skeleton live stream I did before. Again, if this goes too fast, go back, rewind, watch it again. If you're still confused, my email address is down in the description. I'm going to hit L for line, and then I'm going to select that offset edge and just do the other component here. I'm just going to draw something up here. This is not going to be super exciting. Let's make sure that I hit my little offset over here. Use a constraint to make that horizontal. And then I'm just going to throw a couple of dimensions on that. So, well, probably just 1. Let's make it 100 long. This doesn't really matter. One sketch, but having the 2 parts in one sketch. Kind of interesting. Now, I'm going to take this another step right now because I think this makes sense. Because this clearance of a half a millimeter that I just put in here, the offset, why not, since we might have to play with this depending on what 3D printer we have, how accurate it is, why not go into modify, go into change parameters, create a user parameter, call it clearance, and I'm going to type in that half a millimeter I put in there, hit OK. Now, I've also done live streams in parameters, so if this is brand new, again, find those. And then I'm going to go down and find where that is. So that will be right there, D7, that's my half. Type in clearance. Oh, it shows up right there. And hit OK. Now I'm actually controlling that gap here by having a parameter. So now I actually don't need to go in and mess with this sketch anymore. Now there's only 1 dimension right now, but we might start doing more later on. Who knows? Okay, so with this, now we come to a crossroad right here, and I'm gonna want to show you both ways tonight. So we're gonna come back to this crossroad again. But one sketch holding on to 2 components. We have the clearance in there between the 2. I set that with the change parameter. So I can always, at any point, go in here and change this. And I'll show you that in a second. And it will update. Now, one progress from here could be to go in and say create. Go in and say I'm going to revolve. Anything that is round, you normally start thinking revolved. And I'm going to go in and select my profile. I'm going to select that rotating cap, for example. And then it's looking for the axis, what's going to be this axis here. And I'm going to hit OK to that. And there we kind of like have the first piece here. Okay. Now you see my sketch disappeared. It will turn off. There's actually a setting, but we're not going to worry about that. All you have to do is go back over to turn the light bulb on, and you can see it again. Now we could do another revolve. Select this other section. Select that same axis, but it's just the bottom line, to revolve around, and now we have the second one. Now what we have, I'm going to turn the sketch off again. What we really have right now is what is called two bodies. Right? So one is the first body, body 2 is the other half. Now, if I go in to inspect sections analysis, and let me turn my origin on, and I select that, you will now hit OK to that. You will now see, if I go right into it, you can now see, I hope it shows up, that we have a gap in here, and this is the clearance gap for these two. There's going to be some clearances. Now I don't know how much clearance you need on your printer. The neat thing about this is that at any point I can go into modify, I can go to say change parameter, and I can change this. So if I change this to 1, we hit enter, look at the screen, look over here when I hit enter. See how it just got twice as big, right? So here you could adjust till you get you can do a couple of test prints till you find that number, adjust the number that fits. Okay. Now to get out, this is one of the questions I get sometimes. How do I get out of section view? Just hit the analysis light bulb over here again, and you're back to kind of like your normal aspect. Now you saw that on my model over here, I also have the section analysis on there, that I kind of like had a groove on here, and Keith had that on his model, and I added it on too, because if not, you wouldn't be able to see the pot spinning around. Well, it would mean that I could just be like, look, it's spinning, and you wouldn't be able to see. So what we're going to do next is we're going to create that curve. I'm going to show you another trick. I hope I don't go too fast. If I do, rewind. So I'm going to go in and create a new sketch. I'm going to select that same plane as I did before. Now, if you ever have a trouble selecting a plane or something, hold down your left mouse button for a second, and you will see that this little menu appears. I'm going to show it to you in a second again. Then you can actually select it. Now, I'm going to show you a neat trick. I want to create an arc that goes across here. So I'm going to go in and select a 3-point arc. That's one of my favorite arcs. 3-point arc. Now, you will see that I can't snap to the endpoint because this is actually from the top. It's actually a development, right? Because it's round. We're looking from the top. We can't really see this intersection. But check this out. If I just place it, 2 of the points, and then place the last point, I'm just going to place that down there. By default, Fusion projects that line that I selected, that horizontal line. And when it did that, those 2 endpoints appeared. So now I can go down and say coincident, and I can now snap these 2 to the endpoint. So if you didn't know this, you could sit there and try to place the arc and be like, I can't snap to anything, but you actually can after you placed it. I guess that's just a little, that's a free trick. Let me fully define this arc. You don't have to pay anything for that one. So this arc is fully defined. Let me hit Q for press pull. And again, here it could be really hard to select that profile. Sometimes it can be hard. If you hold down your left mouse button, this little menu appears. And here you could either select the face, that profile, or the other face. So this is a filter thing that Fusion gives you. So hold down your left mouse button a little bit longer than you think you should, and this little menu will appear. And now you don't have to worry about, trying to click that. Hit the profile. I always like to drag the line. I'm going to go 2 sides, and I'm just going to switch them both directions to go all. So I make that cut through there. Okay, so we're getting there. Now, here comes something important. And that is we need these two parts. We want to be able to simulate it like I'm doing on this screen, where I can rotate it around, meaning we got to kind of like apply a joint to it. But you can only apply joints to components. You can't do it to bodies. And if you remember from just 2 seconds ago, right now, this is two different bodies right here. And this could cause a little bit of frustration if you're new to Fusion. You're trying to go in here now and say, okay, I want to add a joint, but you can't because it's not components, it's bodies. Now, I wanted to show this because I actually got an email about this the other day with a little bit of confusion about this. So what you can do at this point, now it comes with a cost. What you can do at this point is I can right click on this body and I can now say create component from body. Now it is legit, it's perfectly legit. So right click on the body and say create component from body. And then it will get one component down here. Now body number 2, right click on that one and also make a component for that one. Now I got the 2 components. That's what I need to create the joint so I can rotate it around. Now, I hope I can explain this so it makes sense. This history line down here will always stay true in Fusion. And that is, I think, that's just me. I think that's a good thing, my personal opinion. This line will always stay true. But what happens when you follow the steps I just did is that when you go into component number 1 and highlight that on the fisheye, look, the features in here are not, the features are not in here. And the same thing if I go into component number 2, the features are not in here because, go back up to the top level, because we made the components at the end, all our extrusions and everything is behind it. Now, I know some people will argue that they should go into the components, but I would say that I could see that could cause some problems down the road. I'm not that smart, but I could picture that. So I actually prefer that it is true just to this point here. Now, a way around this, if you do want that when you click on one component that you get the features in here, would have been to create the components from the beginning. So I'm just going to, and some of you guys already know where I'm going with this, but just bear with me for 2 seconds. Oh, let me show you another cool command. Do you ever use this? If you go up to the redo, you might do it, I do it normally on the keyboard Control Z, but if you go up to the redo and you click on the little arrow next to it, do you know that Fusion remembers every single thing that happened all the way? Wow, right? So what we can do at this point is we could actually kind of like try to start going backwards and say replace some dimensions. That was the arc. You know, how far do we want to go back here? But if we go back to let's see, maybe change parameters. See how it just rewinded all the way back to the point where we went into to change that parameter? That means that I now went too far? I did. Well, that was my mistake. Yeah, I want to get that back. And it won't let me go forwards. All right, if you missed this before, let me recap. So what I did was I actually created a expression in here, or a parameter in here, so I can always control the clearance on this part. And you will see this just in a second happening again. Okay. Perfect. Now we're back to where I added that parameter in there. Now what you could have done, if you wanted to have the different in each of the parts, would be at this level. I've created my one sketch that is holding everything, right? Now I go up and say right click and say create new component. I know I need 2, so I'm going to right click and create another new component. And now what I could do was I could say, okay, component number 1, make that one active. Now I could go in and say, create a revolve and do exactly what you saw me do before for the first one. So now that exists inside of component number 1. Go in and say, when I do component number 2, I'm just going to turn the sketch back on. And then I could go in and do the revolve for this one. Now, it really depends on what you're doing. So I don't want to tell you what is right and what is wrong. I really don't want to claim that, because I think that is a dishonest of me to do that. Because I think both ways kind of like holds a place. And if you select 2 edges there, the projection automatically happens. So if you didn't know that one, I can't remember what I made it now. Doesn't really matter. And Q, and again, if you can't select the profile, hold down your left mouse button for a second and it will actually show up. Okay, if you just came in here, really doing some, what I think a couple of neat things here. Okay, so now you will see that each component now is holding everything, except, I guess, my original sketch. I could have started a sketch and in each component and projected whatever I wanted in there, but I think that's a little bit of a waste of time for something like this. Okay, so now we got the 2 components in here. We turned them from bodies into components, which means that now we can add that rotating joint. Now, I talked about joints before. If you're coming from another piece of software, joints is kind of like an interesting kind of thing. The trick with Fusion, and actually when you get this, if you're coming from another software, you're going to be like, oh, most other pieces of software, we're talking joints, you are removing each degree of freedom as you're going along. So you're kind of like applying a mate. For example, if you come from SolidWorks, like I do, the trick in Fusion is you apply all the constraints at once, all the degrees of freedom gets locked down at once, and then you're removing them instead. So it's reverse. Actually makes it a little bit easier. On top of that, Fusion has a very neat option in here. So you see the joint. There's actually a as-built joint in here, and that is perfect for what we did, because we built these 2 parts the way we actually want them. So check this out. The first thing that we always got to do is we always got to lock one down. I'm going to lock this big cylinder down. So I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to ground it. Just get a thumbtack next to it. One of them has to be locked into space. But check this out. As-built joints. Go into Assemble. As-built joints. This only works if the components are sitting where you actually want them to end up. Select the components you want to join. Well, that's going to be this one, and it's going to be the other one. Then the whole thing shakes, earthquake, because what it did is it just created a rigid joint, completely locked all the 6 degrees of freedom in one click. This is the difference. Now I can start loosening up the degrees of freedom. So I'm going to click on the drop down and select a revolute. Click on that. And now it's looking for an axis to spin around. I'm going to select right on that axis right there. Click on that. And then you will actually see here that something is spinning around. I can hit the little play button. You see the shadow. It doesn't look at much. But let me hit OK. And grab this edge. And now I have done that degree of freedom. Right there. So I hope this is kind of useful. And again, because the way I set everything up, if I go, let's do a section view here. We didn't do a section view on this one. Section analysis, and select that face right there. Because of the way we set this one up, at any point, right, we can go into this change parameters, and we can change this. So as I hit enter, you'll see the model changes, the gap changes. that clearance, so you can adjust that. I can see I'm going to run a little bit over tonight because I got more stuff I want to show you. So this was kind of like the first thing I think that Keith was looking for in regards to be able to print this part up here. The next section of the model was this one here, where we actually kind of like take the same part, but we modify it so we kind of like get a leveler in here, so we can spin it around. Now I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this again using just one sketch. What makes it interesting, but that's one of my preferred way to do it. So I'm gonna turn that first sketch on again. Now we could, in theory, if you just wanted to, go in here and edit that sketch, and we're kind of like back in the history tree so we can see things. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a 2-point rectangle, because I'm actually gonna just create another cylinder right in that first sketch, and I don't know how long it's gonna make it. It doesn't really matter. Let's make that 10. This doesn't matter, people, so just bear with me here what I'm doing here, like lengthwise. I'm gonna do this right here, and let me show you how easy it is by just putting that 2-point rectangle the way we did this. Now, of course, I also need clearance here. Just like I added clearance there, I need clearance here. We could use the same thing. O for offset. I don't have chain selection on. Click the 2 lines that I want. Now again, it goes inward. That's not what I want. But I can type minus, then it goes outwards. But I actually want this clearance to be the same as the rest of the model. So if I start typing in clear from my parameter, you will see that ends up right there. And now you will see I get the same clearance. Hit enter. So now that parameter we said is now controlling the first one, but also the second one. I hope that this doesn't get too crazy. Let's just play with it here. I'm going to stop this sketch. I'm going to go back into our first component, activate that one, right? So remember here we had that sketch. If I right click on it and say edit feature, you can see that we actually have that here. We can select that. Just gonna make sure we get that little section in here too. It might be hard for me to select like this. Okay, hang on. Let me select this. And this. Oh, what am I doing? Select this, there we go. So I'm selecting all these 3 pieces, and the rotation angle is still that one, right? So now we added that little thing there. Let's go back into component number 2, go into that revolve, edit that feature. I'm just gonna X these out. I think that's easier. Go normal 2, make sure I select, that's just this boundary right here, and that center there, right? So now if we go back into our section analysis, again, if I'm going too fast, I'm sorry, folks. Go back into our section analysis, we can see that now we have that clearance around. And again, if I go in and change that parameter to something, it didn't update, did it? Did it? Why didn't it update? It looks, it should update. For sure it should update. I think it did update. I can't see how it would not have. But let me just go back, edit sketch. Select that 50. Unless I didn't select this. Oh, why don't I? It doesn't like the minus suddenly. Oh, they didn't need didn't want the minus. There we go. It's a little skewed. I wonder if Let's go in here, change parameter, 0.5. It does update. Okay, now it updates. Okay. So now the whole thing updates here. Cool. So I hope that this is kind of useful to see, except when I'm messing around with things. It's good to see how this kind of works. Now I wanted to show another little thing, and like again, I'm at the half an hour mark. I'm going to run a little bit longer just because I think this is kind of interesting, and that is when we go in and look at the part here. We're now going to add kind of like this handle to it, and we're going to have it so it bangs into the blue handle, bangs into the green set here with context sets, because that's how we want to print it out. So I'm going to get out of the analysis tool. I'm going to actually go in here, and let's go back into our original sketch and draw up that handle. Edit sketch, and I'm going to use a 2-point sketch again, and I'm just going to draw on the bottom end here. Doesn't really matter where we're drawing in here. And I'm going to draw a handle up that's going to be something like this. Let's make it 10 wide. Let's make it go from here to here, 60 like that, and we're also going to give it a height of 40. That's going to be kind of like, well, this is going to be our opening. I wanted to show you another trick with the revolve. So let's stop this sketch. So now we kind of like have that sitting there. And this is one sketch controlling all this. Let's go back into component number 2. I want to show you something when it comes to the revolve. Because I say the revolve is always great for round things. So if I go in here and I select this top section here, and I select the angle to cut through, now it will cut with it, right? But be aware of, you can actually control this angle. So if I type 50, it will only cut 50. And I can actually go symmetrical, just like that. And then over here in the bottom, you can actually choose what it's going to cut into. Now in this case, it's only going to cut into our first body, or component number 2. So that's what we want. So now we kind of have just cut a section in here for the handle to be in. I hope this makes sense. So we have just added that green opening right here. Now we need to create the handle, what's going to be attached to the second part, component number 1 here. So in component number 1, we could again go in and open a new sketch. Now I'm going to sketch right here on the top face of that. And I could actually, you could go in and use something like P for project, and you could actually borrow these 2 vertical lines here. That will, at least when I go to the top, will kind of give me the opening. And then we could go in here and just do another 2-point rectangle. Just going to sketch something close. And now, again, we could D for dimension. We could go in here, and we could put a dimension in here. Now here, we could actually do the same thing again. Type in clearance, like that. And now that is driving between this 2. So we are using that parameter to set all this up here, and then I'm just going to give it a width here. Let's make it 10. That's where we made everything else. And then to be able to place it, this might be a little bit hard to see. To be able to place it right in the center, I'm going to use my symmetry command. This endpoint to this line here. There we go. Now it's centered. Now that sketch, and you might have to rewind, is sitting right in here. Now if we hit Q, again, if I'm going way too fast, I'm so sorry. Select that profile, and we'll draw this one up here. It's going to be a join. So that comes up there. right? Whatever high we want it. Hit OK. So now, when we're looking at this, we go back up to the normal one, we now have that handle sitting right there. And you can see how that handle now moves. I hope that's visible there. But look at this. That is not good, right? It doesn't stop right now. That, let me just hide my first sketch here. That is where we're going to use context sets. So context sets is right over here. Enable context sets. I'm going to click that. That brings this one over here. I've done live streams on this too. Right click, create a new context set, and I'm going to set between this component and this component, I want a context set. Hit OK. Now when I drag this, you will see that it stops. But notice where it stops. It doesn't, it stops down here. Okay? Now, if some people are smarter than me and they'll be like, oh yeah, I get that. If you look at my other one for Keith, you will see that that stops flush. See that, how that stops flush? Right? And the other one, on the other side, it stops, if I can move it around. The other one stops flush too. Where this model here, it gets pinched down here. There's like an angle that is wrong. And the reason that that angle is wrong is because the way I did this, but I wanted to show it to you. There's so many things I want to show you. When I did this revolved cut here, I took a flat surface right here, right, that sketch, and I flinged it down 50 degrees this way. I flinged it 50 degrees that way. What I didn't take into account for was that this has a thickness to it. So if it was just one, if it was paper thin right here, then it would be flush. But because I added that 10 millimeters to this, this will actually not work. So I showed this, you know, just to show it. So how do we get by that? Let me just go in here for a second and right click, and we can actually delete, or we could also just suppress it, that feature. And let's move right after that here. So now what we can do is, I'm going to show you a little trick. So I'm going to open up a sketch again. I'm going to create a plane on this back face, an offset plane. I'm going to drag it back here, and 65 will bring it right to the center of that slot that we created. Then I'm going to sketch on that. Okay, so I'm going to right click here, and I should actually probably do this in the right component. What will be component number 2? That's where I should have done it. So we still have that plane. That should be good. Component number 2, create a sketch on this plane. And what I should do is I should actually draw up my rectangle up here. And so draw something like this. There was 10 wide, and let's move it over. Let's use the symmetry command again. I hope this is not going too crazy. So now it's symmetrical, and I think I did 50 on it or something like that, right? So now we have this rectangle here. It's still blue, which means that it can probably move around. So let's do midpoint to there. There we go. Now it's fully defined. So what I should do instead of what I did before is I could go in and say, okay, let me do a circular pattern and select this edge, select the center point, and then instead of going full, I'm going to do 50 degrees. I only need 2. Actually, I'm going to go minus 50. So now we have a line right here. Hit OK, because that's actually what this one's going to be able to travel over, right? And now I can do the same thing again. Right click, repeat circular pattern, select this side, select the center point. That might be a better way to do this too. Now I'm going a little bit off the cuff here. 50. I just need 2. So now I kind of like have, I just drew up on that plane that movement. And then I actually probably would just do a, what would I do? Do an arc. This really doesn't pretty matter at this point. I just need something enclosed. So now it's enclosed. And I still have that component active. And if I go in here and do a Q and select all of it, and I do a distance of, we're going to do symmetrical of 5. That should create that cut. And then move this back here. Component number 1. So here we have, oh, actually, when I did that cut, I should have chosen what components to cut. I don't want to cut component number 1 like that. So then there's that cut there. And then when we go back into component number 2, and we unsuppress this, now see how it ends up being flush with that. Whew. That was a lot. Now, I hope that this was useful. You tell me if it wasn't. But the idea is that right now, a couple of things I think with this model, I think is exciting about this model here. One thing, let me just move this one over there. Turn my section analysis off. One thing I think is exciting about this, everything is controlled in one sketch, what I favor. But of course, this whole thing about going in and modifying, changing the parameter for and clearance for your 3D printer, and is completely set in there, including on the sides. So now it really depends on, you know, whatever you do, everything will update both on the sides here, on the ends here. I think that's very, very valuable. I'm sorry I'm running over, but I have to show this. The whole thing about using the as-built joint and how you can group things together into different components. I think that is that is important to know. So yeah, thank you to Keith for sending me an email about this project that is for a school that he's working on. I hope this was useful. I hope you can use this for something. If you are brand new to this whole, I'm talking about clearances, down in the description area, you will find 2 videos I did on my perspective of clearances. Now, I know somebody will argue with me about some of it. That's fine. You can download this model if you want to, and you can play with this. But this is a way to kind of test what kind of fits you get on your printer. And actually, I used to use this for machining too, specifically for YIDM. I've had experiences using something similar to this. So kind of like finding out, you know, you're reading one thing in your manual of your machine, but, you know, it all comes down to whatever work environment you're in. Man, I think there was a lot in that video. If it went too fast, please just rewind, watch it again. If you're still confused, I have a feeling with 131 live streams, we have something that I can send you. My email address is down in the description area of the video. You're definitely more welcome. Any future topics you have, send it to me. I'm here to help. I sometimes struggle a little bit keeping up on the comments in the emails, but I try. All right, guys, I'm going to end this 131 live stream right here. Hope it was useful. If you are watching the recording, thank you so much. Don't forget, if this was completely waste of your time, thumbs down. If you liked it, thumbs up. Just trying to add a little bit more value to your Fusion experience. If you're in the live stream, hang on 2 seconds and I'll be right in there and say hi to everybody in the chat. Take care, folks, and I hope you have an awesome, awesome day.